Welcome to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit, a platform where we have invited Spirit to share messages, healings, and transmissions with all of us. May this energetic experience help us to expand our awareness and to deepen the relationship we have with our higher self, our spiritual team, and with Source, however we define them. Thank you for being here and for taking part in this amazing journey. So welcome to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit. Once again, my name is Daniel Martinez Stahl. I am with Nick Rafter, and we are in the 8th episode of season 2. And so I'll let Nick introduce himself, and then we will go from there. There's a couple things that I do want to add about the conversation that Nick and I had, and the reason that I invited him to be part of this conversation with us. And again, I'll go into that after Nick introduces himself. So go for it, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for inviting me. My name is Nick Rafter. Nick is short for Domenick, for those who are curious. I live in New York City, in the borough of Queens, very close to JFK Airport, for those of you who live in New York. I am a realtor by trade. I used to be a journalist. I actually am still a journalist, freelance copywriter. And I have only recently discovered, in the last 6 months, my ability to channel experience and speak to those who have passed over. And it's been an interesting experience, and still a lot of learning that I'm going through every day. And so that's what I think Daniel was here inviting me to talk about.
Exactly. And so, as I've mentioned a couple times throughout the season, my initial intention for bringing people as speakers to the summit in season 1 particularly was bringing in people that had established a mastery in their communication with spirit. And as it turned out, this season, a lot of the people that were being referred to me either didn't channel in the traditional senses, or like Nick, in Nick's case, has only recently started learning that he's able to channel. And so I thought that this would be a beautiful conversation for us to have as a community, because this is part of why I've built this platform, is not only to be exposed to incredible energies, but also to let people know that they're already channeling and they just don't realize it. And the more awareness that we give to that, like Kitty and I were talking about in the last episode, the easier that communication flourishes. And so I wanted to have this conversation with Nick about how did he find out and realize that he was channeling, and more importantly, which I assume is the case, he realized that he has been channeling for a long time, but just didn't label it as such. And so that's kind of the conversation that I wanted us to start with.
Yeah, so I want to go a little to my background. I think it's important to sort of understand that even though I've just recently learned that my ability to channel, I've obviously been doing it for many years, didn't know. And that's something that that's really struck me, is I can think back to events that happened when I was 17, 18 years old, where I was clearly getting information from somebody who passed over, but didn't understand that's where it was coming from. And only when I was able recently to understand what I was hearing, was I able to sort of make sense of it and know that it was channeling, was what was going on. So I grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic, and I think it's important that that's part of it, because in the Catholic religion, you do kind of connect to spirits, not in a different way, and to the saints and people who cross over. And I think a lot of my understanding of saints helped me understand channeling later on. And so, that's where it started. It started, when I was a young boy in Catholic church, trying to speak and understand stuff that the saints or those who have passed over were trying to guide me with, and values and stuff like that.
So what happened when it happened to you that you realized, wait, I'm channeling? Because you said that it was about 6 months ago. So what was that? What was that moment?
So it was about 6 months ago, and I would say what was happening was I was dozing off a lot, and I wasn't sleeping, but I caught myself dozing, and as I was dozing, I was hearing either music or a voice or something that wasn't in the material world, or I was having sort of an aura or something. And actually I panicked and thought I was actually having seizures. And I went to the doctor to ask them what was going on, and they did do an MRI, because I had, at the same time this was happening, I had been rushed to the hospital for hypertension. My blood pressure, I went to a doctor's appointment, normal, my blood pressure was sky high. It was over 200, over 130 or something like that. And protocol was to go right to the hospital. So I had gone to the hospital for hypertension. They thought that I was on the verge of a stroke. And, everything turned out fine. And so after that, when I started having these moments where I was dozing off, I was worried that maybe that was an effect of whatever I went to the hospital for, my high blood pressure. Turns out everything was fine. No problems, the brain waves were fine and everything. So I began to sort of whenever this would happen, I went to a meditative mode where I just want to listen and not be scared or be concerned or be paranoid. And that's what I realized I wasn't doing. Whenever these events were happening in the past, I was trying to snap out of them and get out of them and not embrace them and see what was there. So I chose to embrace it and listen. And what I heard or saw were made no sense to me at all. And so in this case, it happened while I was in a work meeting with a colleague of mine who is of Nepali background. And what I saw was an avalanche, like a snow avalanche, and I felt frigid, really cold. I started shivering. And I looked at my colleague and I said, by any chance, I didn't know she was Nepali at the time. So by any chance, do you have a relative who died in an avalanche or passed in an avalanche? And I don't know what made me say this. I literally can't even tell you that I was thinking about saying it as I was saying it. It kind of just came out. And as I was saying it, my mind was like, what are you doing? Why are you saying this? And she looked at me with this stone-as cold eyes, total shock. And she looks at me and she goes, my great-grandfather was a Sherpa who helped one of the earliest climbers of Mount Everest, and didn't die at Everest, but died in an avalanche during an earthquake on another mountain in Nepal. And she was like, how did you know that? And I said, I don't know. I literally, all I saw was an avalanche, a lot of snow, and I felt very cold. And something clicked. And it wasn't even in my brain. It was something else. Maybe, I think it was my heart, where I said, somebody's relative died in an avalanche here in this room. And I'm connected to that person, and I'm meant to say it. And so what started to happen was I got more and more messages like that. And I was afraid to say them. So I thought maybe, if no one fit the bill, maybe they thought I was BSing or whatever. But I just started trusting it and saying, well, let me trust the information that I'm getting. So I had another instance where I was at a friend's friend was hosting an event in her studio in the basement, and I felt the presence of an older woman, and she also channels, and she's like, "Yeah, it's my mother," and I knew immediately that's who it was, and also a little girl, and she says, "Yes, there's a little girl here as well," and so I began to realize that like I should just trust the information I'm getting and say it. So I began to connect with my own family members, and I connected with my grandmother, for instance, and my grandmother told me that she appreciated the tattoos, but she thought they were ugly on one of my cousins. And I thought, my cousin doesn't have any tattoos. What's she talking about? And it turned out that he actually got a tattoo of the game Triominoes. It's kind of like dominoes, but they're triangles. And my grandma used to play with him this game all the time. And he got the tattoo of the Triominoes with her birth date and the day she passed on it. And I didn't know this. I had no idea he had gotten these. And I sat there, and this was about Memorial Day weekend. I was sitting in my yard, and he took his shirt off, and I saw the tattoos, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's what she was talking about." And so I began to sort of realize that, like, trusting the information I'm getting, getting out of my own way, getting the doubts out of my way, and then I was able to do it better and better. And one of the hardest things is sometimes when I get messages, it's times where I don't know how to control it, or how to like say, look, right now is not a time where I can do this. So, I've been in showings. I'm a realtor, and it's really hard when you're a realtor because you walk into a lot of these houses and apartments, and there was so much spirit there, and especially in New York City because there's so much history in these buildings, and they all want to talk to you, and they all want to communicate through you, and you're trying to show an apartment, and you have 3 or 4 different spirits, fighting for your attention, and you got to really sort of like swap that away. So learning how to do that has been quite hard, and I haven't yet figured it out. But I've just started to basically tell them, like quietly tell them, give them this like mental block from not now. Let's talk later. Let's talk when there's a better time. If you have something to tell me, let's just deliver me. And so that's how I'm starting to learn. I'll be honest. I guess everyone here has some experience with channeling. So maybe you all know as well. I'm still a little freaked out by it because sometimes it feels like I'm always being watched. So I don't know how to handle when you're intimate with somebody and there are spirits there watching in the room and stuff like that. So it's still a little bit scary to me, but I'm beginning to learn, and I'm beginning to realize that this was a gift that I had years earlier, and I wish I knew I had it because I might have made better choices in life, or helped other people make better choices if I knew and trusted the information that I was getting. So that's been my experience. It's been about 6 months, it's been about 5 months actually, and yeah, and I'm learning. So
cool, very cool. And so there's a couple things that I want to highlight here. And again, for those of us that are learning to connect with spirit or are recognizing that we already have a connection and are beginning to find our way through that, a couple of things come up. Let me begin by saying I'm not a teacher. I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. I'm just sharing what I've learned and what I've heard and what makes sense to me. I will always talk about Jamie Butler. If anybody's interested in learning how to connect with spirit and how to work with spirit more effectively, I love her. JamieButlerMedium.com is her website. And she's got a number of different classes. And so I would highly recommend anything with her. But anyway, one of the things that I've learned is to have and to set your boundaries and your intentions. And so one of the things that I hear time and time again, I am not one of these people, at least not yet. I don't hear voices. I don't spirits don't communicate with me in that way yet. Whether or not they will or won't, I'm told I will at some point. But I've never had to set these kinds of boundaries. But what I hear people that I respect and people that have done this and have gone through this is about being very clear about what you're willing to do and not willing to do, what you are okay with and what you're not okay with. And the more clear you are with those boundaries and that framework in which you create how you want spirit to engage with you, they'll respect that. There have been times, Jamie talks about a situation where she was at dinner with her parents and a spirit was getting her attention, and she was like, I'm at dinner with my parents, leave me alone. And they became very insistent, to the point where her mother recognized something and said, somebody wants to talk to you, don't they? And she said, yeah. And so her mother said, go ahead. And so it gave Jamie that permission, and Jamie found out that this individual had a niece or a granddaughter or somebody related to him in that restaurant, and he wanted to pass a message to her. And one of the things that I've heard other people talk about as well is when they set the boundaries, they will add something like, if this is really life critical or really life urgent, ping me 3 times. So they've got these kinds of safety mechanisms within their own process where, if this is something that's really, really urgent, even though I've set this frame, I've created this structure of I'm not available to be communicated with at this time, either because I'm sleeping or because I'm I'm at work, or, whatever the case may be, whatever frame you create as a boundary, you can always add like an escape clause where if it's really urgent, they can ping you 3 times with the same thing to kind of say, no, I really need to talk to you. And again, it's your choice whether or not you accept that or push that off until another time. So those are the things that I've heard other people have done. And the other thing that I want to bring up, and I'm curious to see what your experience has been with this, Nick, as well. One of the things that I hear a lot from people that are playing in this space, they're concerned about bringing in negative energies or dark energies or things of that nature. I don't have that belief system or that idea or that perception. I work from a place where I'm very clear with my intention. I'm very clear with my energy. I know that my team is with me, supporting me, guiding me, my higher self being a part of that. And they are the guardians, if you will, of my space. And in my intention, I have said that any energy that wants to communicate with me or through me needs to go through my spiritual team, my advisors, my guides, my higher self. So they're the gatekeeper. And so anything that comes to me or comes through me has already been vetted by my higher self and my spiritual team. And so these are things that I've set in place in my own experience. But I would love to hear what you've done or what your experience you've had with that.
That's interesting, because I thought the same thing, where I thought, oh God, I'm going to get all these bad spirits that are going to just like torment me, and harass me or something, and one of the things that I understood was I do have a team as well. And you're talking about the team, and I see that team working with me. It's my 2 grandmothers who I know are like the managers of the team. And a lot of spirits who I don't know, I haven't met yet or don't know yet. I assume they're relatives I never met, or there are other people who I've never met who are somehow involved in my life. But yeah, I sense that team is there as well. And what's interesting about that is that I was sort of reassured by some of those spirits that this won't happen, or if it does happen, it won't be what you think it is. I did get very recently a spirit which was a woman in extreme distress. Just had been assaulted and murdered, and wherever I was at the time, and was really like, please, you have to help me. You have to help me. And it was extremely distressing. But I will say that the rationale behind it, after I chatted with her a little bit, was a positive one. It was that she just wanted, whoever it was that I was supposed to reach out to, and I haven't figured out who it is yet, and she's guiding me towards that place, to know that she's at peace, because the people who love her don't know where she is. She's, so it's a really, I feel incredibly responsible with that, where it's like, why me? Why my responsibility? And I don't know who I'm supposed to message to yet. And maybe it's somebody here. I don't know. But it's not, that hasn't been a negative experience. That's been a little more positive. And I think in her case, I think she just recently passed. She's sort of in a weird place where she doesn't know. And this is helping her transition as well. So having experienced that now, I'm less afraid of some of the bad stuff, because I think, if that's the bad stuff that I'm going to have to deal with, then it's okay. I'm okay with that. But it was distressing at first, because I heard cries that was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to, this is not a place that I feel comfortable, but I just, you got to roll with it. You got to really understand that this is not something that's negative. It's something that exists, I think, I believe, for positive reasons. And I think that that's the reason why I don't want to say it was chosen, but why she was allowed through, because it was to give me a positive experience.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I want to add to that. And I will mention your comment, Angie. And there's also a question that came through directly as well that I'll get to. If you are learning to connect with spirit and something comes forward that makes you uncomfortable, you can always put a stop to that and do it with love and compassion. It's, and to yourself as well. It's like, you know what, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. This isn't what I'm interested in, or what I signed up for, or whatever the case may be. Or you can just say simply, thank you very much, but not interested. I remember when I was little, I was talking to my mother about, what if like an unwanted ghost comes to my experience or whatever. And what she said to me has always stuck with me. And it's shifted as my understanding has changed. But what she said to me was, you can always say, in the name of Jesus or in the name of God, leave me alone. So you can always empower the energy of life to empower your request. But there's an element there as well where, similar to what Nick is saying, I know that because of the intentions that I have set and the boundaries that I've created in the way that I want spirit to engage with me, there's a space where I know that if I have an experience with an energy that might seem uncomfortable or dark, or something that makes me react in that way, there's a reason for that to come through. There's nothing that happens to me that I don't allow at a certain level, and I know that, and I trust that. And so that could be a lesson or a learning that I need to go through. I know, and a lot of people will talk about how, as our light becomes brighter, we are going to advertise that we are a bright light, and energies will see that from very far away and will be attracted by that and attracted to that. And that's a nature of us becoming brighter lights, metaphorically speaking. It makes sense. As the brighter you get, the easier it is for you to be found. And so there's an element of that again. But I want to emphasize this, that you are the creator of your own creation. You are in charge of your own experience. You are divine energy. This isn't, you're some small little measly, tiny human, and all of these things are happening to you and you can't control it. No, live into and step into the fact that you are divine source energy. And what does that mean is that you can dictate and create whatever experience you want to create, and what you want to allow or don't allow into your experience.
I think that that's the really important lesson that you emphasize that, because I struggle generally in life with lack of control over things. I don't like not being in control over stuff. And what was terrifying about this when I first figured it out was, can I control it? Can I manage it? And then if I can, how? And that's been the lesson. I really, I hate to compare it to running a business, but I run my own business. So, it kind of feels like some of the same rules apply, where, I joked with a spirit the other day that I have office hours. And I find that I connect with a lot of comedic people who cross over. And so the spirit was like, okay, well, come back in the office hours. I'll bring some coffee. Like that was the joke. And that's made me feel a little more confident. I also realized another thing that I've started to realize in the last few days is I'm beginning to connect with people who have just recently crossed over. Some of them know that they've crossed over, and just giving me this "I'm here and I'm fine" message. My lifelong friend of mine lives about 500 miles away. His husband just passed away last week. Very random. I mean, he wasn't ill, but he wasn't deathly ill. It was extremely sudden. And I didn't know about it at first, because when he posted on Facebook, I was on vacation in Florida, and I wasn't aware of it. But I kept smelling his cologne. And I was like, oh, that's Jimmy's cologne. Like, that's the cologne that Dennis's husband Jimmy wears. And I mean, it was the cologne we probably smell in Florida pretty often, so it wasn't terribly surprising. But I was in weird places, like, in a bathroom, and I was, in the car, and I was like, why do I keep smelling this cologne? And then I saw he posted on Facebook that he had passed away. And so I smelled it again that night, and I said, I know you're here. I knew he was there. And, the message was just simply, I wasn't sure if you were aware, I crossed over. I was met, when I crossed over by my father and my aunts, and I'm safe and I'm comfortable. Just know that I'm fine. And that was the message. That was it. And I didn't know whether I should tell his husband about it. I ended up telling him. He was extremely comforted by it. So that worked out fine. But that was an experience, and I think that was the same experience I had with that woman, that these were people who recently crossed over and were just trying to kind of like, who do I reach out to just to know, what happened, and that I'm okay. One experience I had before I even knowing the channel was, I thought it was a dream, but now I'm realizing it was probably me channeling the spirit. My grandmother passed extremely suddenly in 2013. She was fine on July 3rd. She passed away on July 5th. And it was very sudden. No one had the ability to say goodbye to her. My mother wasn't even in the state. She was away. And it was traumatic for all of us. And about a week after she had passed, my grandma was the type of person who would worry about that. She was like, ooh, no one got to say goodbye. I was laying in bed, and I heard her sort of go, I'm sorry. Like, I heard her voice. And I woke up, and I just screamed out, it's all right. We're all okay. We're going to be okay. And I was like, what was that? Like, it just, without knowing it. And I went back to bed. And I was like, oh, I dreamt of grandma, whatever. And now I'm realizing that she was, at that time, she had just crossed over. I don't think she understood that she really crossed over, because it happened so suddenly. And she was trying to reach me. And I didn't understand that I had the ability to do this. And it was, I think she was getting really frustrated. And I've kind of had conversations with her since I've been on the channel, where she's acknowledged that's what was happening, where we were both unaware that we had the ability to connect with each other, and we were frustratingly trying to, dialing the phone and trying to figure out how to connect. And I think that was like one of those things that, looking back now, shows that I had the ability to do this years earlier and didn't know it. It wasn't at that level yet. A friend of mine that I work with, that I do Reiki sessions with, tells me all the time, well, you weren't at that vibration yet. You weren't there yet, and you only got there the last year. And so, so that's how I understand it. And I think that for a lot of people who are new at this, maybe they might look back and see that they're actually not new at this. They're just new at understanding this.
Realize that I'm speaking. Sorry, I realized that I was muted. I want to shift gears a little bit. There's a question that came in that says, "Hi, Nick, trusting yourself is so difficult for me, at least. How did you overcome this and know what messages were not just your mind, but coming from others? And once you started trusting, did that reinforce your quote unquote knowing?" I'm not sure what you'd call knowing or whatever.
Yeah, I think I understand the question. It's how do you know you're not making up in your head? How do you know you're not just making this up? For me, it really was about not even thinking about it. Not even thinking, is this information, am I just making it up? I don't think the type of information that I get from channeling spirits are so specific and so in depth that I don't think the most creative brain could make it up on the spot. And so that's one of the reasons why I trust it. So, for example, the case with my coworker in the avalanche, you know, I'm a writer and I'm a creative writer and I do write stories. But this whole thing about a man, Nepal, avalanche, snow, freezing to death, I couldn't have brought it all together that quickly, you know, and created that story. So something had to be telling you this. There had to be some reason why all of this information is coming into my brain at one time. And so now that's how I think about it. I think about it as, well, I'm connecting with the spirit. I'm getting all of this information. It's very specific. It's extremely in depth. So a lot of it's very personal. My mind just isn't, my mortal mind doesn't have the capacity to make all that up in this little amount of time. So I trust this is the spirit telling me this. Now, sometimes and recently I've had experiences where I'm channeling a spirit. I'm talking to somebody who I think affected that spirit, and they go, "No, I don't know anything about that." And I say, "Well, go, figure it, see if there is a connection there, because I'm pretty sure there is." And then they go home and they find out that, I was channeling their great uncle Tom, who no one in the family wanted to talk about because, in one case, because he was gay and died of AIDS, no one wanted to, bring that up. And so that's the more that I end up being, I hate to say right, the more that I end up realizing that the information I'm getting is real, the more that I trust it when I hear it the next time. Because I can hear it, I know immediately it's not something that I'm able to make up in my head. So something has to be genuine about it. And, I just give it out. I mean, it really is one of those things where it's like, which among you, there's an SNL skit about this where they make fun of mediums, where they're like, which one of you had the grandfather who choked at the meatball farm? It is sort of like that, where it's like somebody in this world is connected to somebody who played the ukulele on his front porch in the rain, like that kind of thing. And it's like, oh, by the way, I didn't make that up. That actually was a spirit that I connected to when I was down in Florida. And I'm sitting there going, well, how would I just make that up? Like in my mind, that in that small second, somebody's connected to it somehow. And I just throw it out there and say, is it you? Is it you? And it's usually somebody, or it ends up being somebody. I've had people come back to me and say, I didn't even know about that. So you told me. I asked my father, and he confirmed it for me, And so I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, if it's information that you think you don't have the moral capacity to create, then it's a message. And I think a lot of what we do create in our mind comes from sources, comes from spirits as well. I'm a creative writer. I've written a novel. I've written several short stories. And now I believe that some of those stories were channeled to me by spirits. And I'm telling their story, and no one, it's fiction, obviously, because their story isn't widely known and they're not putting a name to it. But they know that I have the ability to channel them. And they know they have the ability to write a story. And so they're saying, finally, somebody can tell my story. And so that's what I'm starting to think that's
Yeah.
why I'm so great at creative writing. That's why I'm a writer. That's why I'm a storyteller, because it's the Spirit's just channeling it through me.
Yeah, that's cool. And so there's a couple comments that I want to bring up that are in the chat thread. And she talks about how the intention we set is so important for what we are open to receiving. We are more powerful than we remember. We can always set parameters for communication that are safe and comfortable for us. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine when I was living in Singapore that was beginning to connect with Spirit. And Spirit was, people that had crossed over were harassing her during the night, and she wasn't able to sleep. And this is her language, they were harassing her. And I just kind of said, well, why don't you just tell them that you're sleeping and that they can't come? And it sounds really simple, but it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. It's, being clear on what it is that you're willing to accept and what's comfortable for you and what isn't. They'll respect that. I don't know what a psychopump is, Jillian. If you want to, there's a comment here. You might also be a psychopump. I don't know what that is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
A psychopump is a bridge between this world and the spirit world.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So you're creating a light. So you're basically the Grim Reaper. You're not actually the Grim Reaper, but the psychopumps. Yeah. So we help carry them across. We hold their space.
So it's, you assist in there. So there's a friend of mine who is, we're told that she works energetically with a member of her family that specializes in helping people to cross over. This is all at the energetic level. And so my friend is learning to develop that skill set because it's something that she's interested in. I had a session recently where I was working with one of the speakers from season 1, actually. And I was told that as my light has become brighter, I'm attracting a lot of energies that need assistance. And because of my protection, I've created like a sphere around me. And so they're all collecting on the outside of the sphere. And that energy was beginning to impact me. And so what we did was invite my team to help them transition and to do whatever it is that they need to do. And again, this was confirmed in my next practice session with my friends while we were channeling. Maitland, who I talk about all the time, confirmed that they're helping me do that. They're helping me clear the accumulation of energies that are coming towards me for assistance and guidance. And I'm not even aware of this. I'm not even conscious of this. And this is all happening kind of behind the scenes, which I think is really cool to even think about. Caroline mentioned sometimes you must call upon the ascension team of angels to help the soul move on. Say that you send them with love. Talking to them with love is where our greatest power lies. Calling upon Jesus is also very powerful. Yeah, so we can always, ask for assistance from the angelic realm. Jesus and Magdalena are always available as well to help and assist with the love that they represent. So Angie's got a couple comments here, which I'm going to read out because I think that it's going to lead me to a really important point. Perhaps it would be helpful for Nick to set up a relationship with a guide to assist him with these mediumship-like experiences. He doesn't have to be doing this work on his own. And the reason that I'm reading this out is because I want everybody to recognize that we are all on our respective path, and we will always be guided towards the people that will help us if we are interested in connecting with that help. And it doesn't need to be gender specific, which I'm bringing up for a really weird reason, because I had a friend of mine tell me that I needed to find a male spiritual guide. And I've never bought into the whole male-female distinction. My guide became Jamie Butler, who's a female. And she came into my life. I was actually told that someone was going to come into my life to help me out. And a few months later, I learned about the channeling course that she offered. And instantly it was an obvious yes for me. Follow and connect with the people that resonate with you. Trust that you will be presented with people that will help you along the journey when you are ready for that and interested in that. And use your own discernment. And if you start going down a path that you realize or recognize doesn't quite resonate with you, feel free to step away from that path and go somewhere else. There was value in that recognition. So Nick, just out of curiosity, how have you, following up on that comment, how have you connected with your team to help you and assist you along this journey, both physically and spiritually?
I've had regular channeling sessions with specifically my grandmothers about, what is going on, what is this, I will say the earliest example of this, one of the reasons why I think I developed this ability or recognized this ability is about 5 years ago. I've always been anxious and had suffered from anxiety spells, and I had this weird anxiety attack, debilitating anxiety attack over death. I had no reason for it, but I just thought to myself, what happens when you die? And I began to doubt everything that I believed and wonder if it's just oblivion or just like eternal blackness, staring into blackness for the rest of eternity. And that's what scared me. And I had this moment where I said, I was writing it down in the journal. And I was saying, I wish someone from the other side would tell me what death is like and what happens. Because what confused me was the idea that you'd be reconnected with your loved ones when you die, right? And the reason why that confused me is I thought, well, my grandmother was reunited with her loved ones. That will include her grandmother, will include her grandmother. How far back does that go? It doesn't make sense to me that we will all be connected with our ancestors going back thousands of years. That's a lot of people. And so that threw me into a massive anxiety attack over what is death, what happens when you die, and all that stuff. And I was writing down in the journal, and I said, maybe you're connected to the people who passed on and in the afterlife who you want to be connected to, but that's not the same realm. So I might see you in the afterlife, you might not see me. We exist in different realms, and so I thought to myself, well, if that's the truth, I wish I could get a sign. And the moment that happened, I saw a shadow go by and scared like living crap out of me. And I thought, well, that was the sign. And so that actually helped me deal with my anxiety. And so that was years ago. And so now, connecting to what your question was, when I connect to my grandmothers, I asked for some sort of sign and some sort of like signal that they heard me or I'm right or I'm wrong or something else. And the signs usually come in the form of certain words or colors or letters or foods that I know are them connecting to me, or songs, especially music. And that's usually what happens. If I don't get a sign from them, then I know that we have to go back and talk about this again. So that's how I've been communicating through these weird signs and signals. And so I think, one example is I was having a conversation with my grandmother about how to handle children. Because I'm getting more children now than I ever had before. And children is a little scary because actually the children I connect to, like, they know they passed over and they're fine with it. They're kind of cool with wherever they are. But it's scary because somebody lost this child. I connect to them, to their living mother. How do I do that? Like, so I said to my grandmother, I said, when I connect to children, should I ask about their family or how they died? And I got a resounding no from my grandmother. Like, no, don't even touch that issue. Don't even ask that issue. Let them talk to you. And I kept going back and forth. So I just let them talk and not ask any questions, and that was resounding yes. And so that's how I dealt with like figuring it out with my team. And there's somebody on the team that I don't know who they are. I guess maybe over time I'll meet them, who was kind of like in charge of dealing with children. So if children try to connect with me, they're the ones kind of the gatekeepers. And so I kind of just go, person in charge, guide me through this meeting. And so that's wrapping now. And ever since I've done that, I've started to connect to more and more children who really, I mean, I haven't had any who were like, I want to find my mom and I'm okay. It's mostly kids who are just like, hi, I'm here in the other world, and it's so cool. I saw my dog and all this other stuff, and that's been kind of cool because what I've been finding connected to them is that children really do well when they get the crossover. They're actually everyone that's connected to is in a really good place, and it's been so encouraging to know that because it's really hard to like hear about children who pass on, and you wonder like where are they and what are they doing? It's like I've seen a lot of like really happy pastel colors, really happy like circus music, like cartoonies, just a really like joyful place where these children are connected are. And so that's been a really good experience too. And that's my team has allowed me to have that experience and not
very cool.
Screw it up.
So one thing that I wanted to kind of mirror to what Nick has just been sharing with us is we can always ask our team for guidance, and we can also ask the other person's team for guidance as well, which is something that I've been learning as well. As I do the spiritual regressions with people, I know that their team is helping me figure out where to facilitate the direction of the session, what questions to ask, what to emphasize, what to dig a little bit deeper into. I know that part of that intuition on my part is coming from their team or their higher self. And so again, I'm going to re-emphasize this. Whenever I talk about my spiritual team, I'm always including the higher self within that description. There's a comment that Angie makes that I want to highlight as well. She makes a comment about how our imagination oftentimes is misunderstood as fantasy, and that imagination comes from source. The way that it's been described to me, which I really like, is that our spiritual intuition and our imagination are utilizing the same framework. They're working within the same energy. And so we use our imagination in order to connect with our spiritual intuition, and our spiritual intuition communicates to us through our imagination. And so there's a relationship, an integral relationship between those two aspects of our experience, which I really like playing with. Yeah, so anyway, beautiful. Anything else that you guys want to share or want to ask or want Nick to go into deeper? What I would love to do in the meantime, Nick, is as always, I like putting people on the spot a little bit. I know that we've been talking a lot about kind of your process and your journey of learning how to relate to all of these new experiences in your life. I would love to ask your team if there is something that they would like us to discuss, or if there's something they would like to share with us.
Actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because I asked that question before I came on the show. Is there something that I should focus on, or something that I should let everyone know? I think one of the things that I was inspired to share from the team was about the children. I think that it's important that everyone understand that when children pass on, they go to a really good place, positive place, where the experience for them is not scary. It's not weird. It's like, it's almost as if they're dropped in like McDonald's play place. You know, they are taken care of. They are nurtured. They are, and they are in a very positive, uplifting, joyful place. And I think I don't know if anyone in the chat maybe had that thought, like what happens with children, but I was inspired to sort of share that from the team. The other thing that I'm getting from them is that most people have the ability to chat. It's just a matter of like learning the extent of your ability or getting to your place, your right vibration to be able to do it. And there are people who don't want to do it, who just don't want to have the responsibility, and that's okay. I think that's the thing that they've been telling us, because I've been hearing, like, you know, we try to tell people like, hey, you can talk to us, and they just like, I can't do this. This is not something that I want to be involved in. But I mean, I can speak for my own experience. It's a great experience. I mean, it's helped me deal with my mortality in a completely different way. Where even though I'm 39, so I'm not looking to die anytime soon, where I don't fear what comes after this at all really anymore. I mean, I sort of fear the physical mortal pain of dying, but not going over. I mean, it's not, you don't go over alone. You're never alone. And that's, I think, for a lot of people, I know for myself, the scary thing about death is the fear of having to do it alone. Going to a place where you're just all alone. There's no one there. And that's just the end of your existence. And it's not that at all. It's definitely, once you pass over, almost like arriving at a red carpet where you are welcomed into this next life by a lot of support and love and yeah, and you know, if it happens suddenly, it can be a little scary, but you will be able to connect with people who will help you through. And I think that you know, if you're new like me to Traveling Spirit, you have to understand that you do have, and I don't know if it was Angie who said this or Caroline, you are helping them cross over. I think that the more that I connect to people who recently crossed, the more that I realize I'm helping them through this experience. I'm guiding them down that red carpet. I'm one of the people that, I don't think I'm the only one doing it, but I'm one of the mortal people guiding down that red carpet. And so, you know, it's a responsibility and it's a privilege, really. I mean, I think that's the first time I said that about it. But yeah, I think it is a little bit of a privilege, a little bit of an honor to be able to do that. I mean, even when I think about some of the dark stuff that I've channeled, and some of the scary stuff, to be able to sort of help somebody through that experience is, you know, it makes me feel happy. It makes me feel good that, you know, my coworker, her great grandfather, who died in an avalanche, and she was able to connect with him. That made her day, you know. So, yeah, it is a very uplifting experience.
And there's a couple things that I want to add to that as well, Nick. Let me start with the last thing that you shared. I am not. If you guys hear thunder in the background, I've got a storm that's with us. Yeah. I am not interested in, and I don't want to say it that way, I don't feel myself being drawn towards helping people cross over as such. Having said that, and it's very funny, Carolyn. Having said that, whenever I come across an animal that's been killed in roadkill, I always give a little bit of a mental prayer or energy to assist that energy to go wherever it needs to go. Whenever I hear of someone that's died, I always send love and energy towards that individual to help them transition and go through whatever it is that they want to go through. I've always done this since I was a kid. Whether or not I'm going to have energies come to me to help, for me to help them transition physically, I'm not sure if that's really in my design for this lifetime. Clearly, it's something that Nick has chosen in his experience. And so again, you can consciously and willingly choose how you want to engage and what you're willing to and what you're not willing to do. I know people that, something that Nick said earlier, I know people that do not want to trans-channel. They have no interest in that, but they do what I refer to as conscious channeling, and they're happy to do that. And so however it is that you want to, again, set your parameters, please do so. There was a couple things that you said that I wanted to highlight as well, Nick. I'm going to see if they come back. They disappeared on me. Nope, not coming. It'll come back at some point. It's always funny when that happens to me. My mind just goes blank. So Nick, thank you for sharing your journey and your experience. There's
a lot of new experiences happened just in the last hour. I thought I would add that a lot of new kind of clicks happened as I was talking about it.
Yeah.
So this is part of that.
I mean, part of, people talk about how teaching others or talking to others, we learn through the process because we connect dots while we're trying to figure out what is wanting to be said. And or, again, since we're talking about channeling, we're gifted with information that is new to us in a new way of describing what it is that we're happening. So we start kind of connecting dots within our own experience, and our team is helping us to connect dots, which is a really cool relationship. There's something that I wanted to focus on with regard to our individual path and our journey. Again, there's no right path or wrong path. And I think that the underlying message that I'm kind of hearing from this conversation with Nick is to trust in yourself, to learn about how to create a frame around your experience so that you're comfortable learning and exploring, knowing that that frame will shift as you expand. That frame becomes flexible and it will be more inclusive as you grow in your own ability to connect with yourself and your team and with others.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Angie brings something up as well, which is something I wanted to bring up. You mentioned children and the importance of recognizing that children are going to a place which is a beautiful place, for lack of a better way of saying it. And it reminds me of the fact that we place a lot of judgment, our society has placed a lot of judgment on death and of what that means and of the meaning of losing a child. And because there's so much meaning to the death of a child, we give it a lot of importance, like, oh my God, this is a tragedy. The death of a child is not any more so or less of a tragedy than the death of someone that's lived 100 years. It's just a transition from physical form to back to their energetic form. But we've given things a lot of meaning. And so whatever meaning you have given to the experience of life and death, inevitably your life will enforce that and provide you with areas to work through those perceptions. And so,
yeah, I think it's also important to know that children pass on because their work here was complete in that short amount of time. and they've left some sort of, imprint. My neighbor actually lost a child. She gave birth to a child died 2 hours later, and she struggled with what was the point. What was the point? He only lived 2 hours. And recently they moved. They bought a new house. They have all this stuff. They had a child, and she realized that his legacy still carries on. This many years after, longer than he's lived. And I told her, I said, well, that was the point, right? That was the point. And so being able to understand that we all are here for whatever reason we're here, and some of us do that in a matter of hours or days or weeks or years, and some of us it takes decades or a century, and it's just a matter of what's in the cards for us. It's no more, it's not as if a child who dies at 5 years old still had so much left to do and didn't get to do it. No, they were here. Those 5 years were years they were supposed to be here to do what they had to do.
To do what they had to do, and also to engage with the people in a way that was agreed upon. And so as I play with this whole space of reincarnation, life between lives, past lives, and spiritual regression, spiritual journeys, time and time again, we're reminded that, and this goes back to Angie's comment, which I'm actually going to read out, an earthly child may have an old soul, and very much so. A lot of times, individual souls that are very advanced will agree to come in for a short period of time to help somebody with a lesson of loss or of attachment or of letting go or of love or whatever the lesson is around the short life and death of their child or of a loved one. And we never know what that relationship is and what the meaning behind that is. But again, this is a reminder to all of us that death isn't what we ascribe to it in our societal understanding of it. And one of the things that I've learned in the last couple of years is my perception of suicide has changed, where I used to think negatively upon suicide. And I've heard stories that in the spirit world, if you commit suicide, of course, there's no judgment, but they're going to send you, you're going to want to come back and continue with the lessons that you were working on. And all of these ideas, which now I don't believe anymore. Suicide is just another choice point for transitioning away from the physical form back into the energetic form. And it doesn't have to have the stigma or the dogma associated with, oh my God, it's a suicide. It's just another exit strategy that, for whatever the reason, we have chosen, either for our own experience or for the experience of others. And so there's this shift that I've gone through in my understanding of life and death, and also the meaning that I've attached to the death of children or to the death caused by suicide, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's interesting that the more we look in this direction, at least in my experience, that changes and that shifts. There's a perspective that becomes more expansive, more inclusive of a bigger purpose, without the judgment and critique and criticism that our society tends to put forward. Couple comments that I want to kind of highlight here. Jill says, this is a fantastic conversation. Nick, why do you think everything kicked in 5 months ago that you started channeling so much and so regularly? I am also from New York, by the way. Love the message about children. This is not anything I have heard before.
I really think it was an arbitrary timeline. I think that's when I hit the vibration I needed to hit to be able to understand what this was. And it just happened to happen in early 2022. I mean, I think the work I did through meditation and through chakra balancing and healing that I've done through the pandemic got me there a little faster. I think that I did a lot of spiritual work during the pandemic when I was not able to work. That I think helped me get to that position quicker than maybe I would have. I would have never gotten there at all in my lifetime, not for that. But I think that's just when I hit that moment. I hit that vibration where I was able to finally understand what this was. And it just happened to happen 5 months ago. think there's any special thing about the date, but I will say that I think the pandemic helped me get to a place where I was able to hit that place, get to that place. And I might never have gotten there without the work of the pandemic.
Well, I think that this is a really interesting topic to bring up and to highlight, because as I said earlier, we're all on a different path, and there's no judgment on one being better or worse than another. You know, I, like I've said before, have been a very slow learner with regards to connecting with and understanding my energy and my connection with source, or my connection with my team. There's others like Nick that I'm friends with that, you know, from one day to the next, something happened in their experience, and all of a sudden they're able to communicate and hear things and see things. And it's like an awakening happened, an awakening moment happened to them. And I think that a lot of this comes back to the choices that we made as we were planning our life. You know, like Nick said, his energy was ready at that time for that to happen. And it felt like a choice point. Like it was like, it was almost like predestined or pre-designed, where once he gets to a certain point in his own development, boom, these gifts are going to become visible to him. Some people talk about how they spontaneously remember a past life or an alternate life. Let me use that phrase, because again, the idea of timelines plays with another conversation altogether. They'll remember an alternate life where they had a specific skill set, and in remembering that they bring that skill set into this life. I've heard of that happening before as well. There's people, I've been directed by one of the other speakers this season to learn more about the Kundalini energy. You know, time and time again, I've heard people spontaneously have awakening moments as this Kundalini energy they become aware of it within their system. And so there's a lot of kind of different ways in which we wake up and remember who we are and what we are and the role that we're here to play. And part of that is also the role that we are choosing for ourselves. I mean, a big part of my own development, I believe the reason that it's slow is so that I can bring people along my journey, and so that I can understand the nuances of what happened in my journey, so I can describe it to others in the way that I do. Whereas if it was just one of those spontaneous things, I'm like, well, it just happened to me. It can happen to you too. It's not going to have the same value if I'm helping people to connect with themselves, for me to say, just trust that it'll happen to you. You know, for me, my experience, my journey is, well, let me tell you about what I've learned through my very slow process and the things that I've uncovered and things that I played with, to see if that something there resonates with you. And so I think that that's a really interesting, subject and topic that you bring up, Nick, about how this just kind of happened and you felt ready. And I don't, I'm sure that the pandemic and the introspection and growth that you did as a result of that led you to be ready for that to happen when it did.
Yeah, that's very true.
When we get here to Earth, we forget we made a plan for this lifetime. Yeah, very much so. I mean, and that's one of the things that we're getting into a position in our experience of life, or so I'm told, and so I believe, where the veil between the afterlife and our current life becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. And there's children that are being born where that veil is very thin or even non-existent. And those of us that are living through this transition are going through that transitional period physically and emotionally, spiritually, energetically. And so it's really, I think that that's a big part of our process, is remembering who we are. I'll talk about time and time again how I am learning to recognize that I am source energy, and that is really hard for me to recognize as a human, because I'm just Daniel in this body. I'm not source. I'm not the one that created the sun and created the earth and created the universe. But yet at some level, I recognize the truth of that statement. And so for me, it's about bridging that and leaning into that direction. And I agree with you, Angie, completely. I mean, I recognize that, you know, I am on my path and I am learning the way that I'm learning. It's not about speed. It's just about, you know, appreciating the process. I was told by a spirit friend of mine, that part of the reason that I am going as slow as I'm going is so that I don't overload my body and overload my system. Because I've chosen that. I've chosen to be slow so that my body can adjust and adapt accordingly. And that's the choice that I've made. And that makes sense to me. That resonates with me. So thank you guys for your comments and your questions. Anything else, Nick, that you want to bring up or share or talk about? Have it be your experience or anything else that's coming through?
I think I brought everything up that I've experienced. Anyone wants to connect with me offline, talk more, I'm happy to talk more about my experiences and share them. Yeah, offline and in private conversation as well. So I'm open to that.
Any comments or questions from anybody that's currently with us? One thing that I will mention again, just because it's just happening. A lot of us will talk about the importance of drinking water. I had somebody, one of my teachers, colleagues, Renee and Anthony, who are currently channeling Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. They were part of season 1. They'll be back in season 3. In a conversation with them, I think it was Anthony that mentioned that when we connect with spirit, it takes a lot of energy to do that. And water is energy, which is the reason that we are reminded time and time again to drink a lot of water. And I bring this up because it's really important. As you guys are in the audience of these connections, you are connecting with energy as well. It's inevitable part of the vibrational experience of these conversations. So please drink a lot of water. I have run out of my water that I've been drinking, and my mouth feels very parched right now. And so it's really important that we drink a lot of water. So I'm bringing that up as a little kind of reminder.
I can hydrate as well.
Yeah. So cool, guys. If nothing else, I'm happy to bring this conversation to a close if you feel like there's nothing else that you want to share or bring up.
Great. Well, if anyone else, like I say, want to connect offline, you can find me and ask Daniel how to contact me, and I'm happy to share any more thoughts that you might have.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's information. There'll be information in the details of this conversation. With regards to how to connect with you.
Oh, great.
Just gonna
I just wanted to say thank you to Nick, because that was really fascinating to hear, and thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Very cool. Yeah. So I was just double checking that I've got your details on the website. And whoever's listening to this after the fact, details will also be in the description of however it is that you're hearing this. One thing that I do want to mention is Nick is really kind in offering anybody that's interested connection with the energy of their home. Have it be in person. If somebody lives near New York City, you can coordinate with him, and he'll come into your home and connect with the energies there and do like a reading of sorts. And he can also work with you remotely if that's something that you're interested in. Again, if you can connect with him directly, again, through the website, you're welcome to do so. And for those of you that are listening to this after the live sessions, this is an opportunity that is offered to the people that are attending the live streaming of this season. So come kind of beginning of September, please respect that. So thank you guys for being here. Nick, thank you so much for talking to us about your journey, your experience, the things that you are learning, how you are growing. Really, really appreciate your willingness to share that with us.
Thank you. It's great. It was a great afternoon.
And so everybody else, thank you guys for being with us. The next session will be at the top of the hour once again. And I will leave you guys with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love. Thank you for being part of this incredible experience. We hope that this session has inspired a new level of understanding within you, allowing you to expand more easily into the essence of your true self and become an even more powerful alchemist in your own life. We invite you to listen to the session again and again in order to go deeper each time and expand even more. Have it be via the replays or the unlimited access package. If you have enjoyed being part of this event, we invite you to tell your friends so that they can join us in the future. We are grateful that you are here, and we thank you for co-creating this experience with us. Until next time, we leave you with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love.